I was always very spiritual. When I was 16, my friend had stayed over at my house, and that day was the last time I saw her. She was accidentally shot and killed, but because of that experience, I wanted to learn more about why I'm here. I got a little book about Virgo. That book validated my personality, and I didn't know why it was accurate. I've done a lot of research on Christianity, astrology, and the Bible, but I taught myself how to do charts. God created the heavens and the earth, and in the book of Genesis, it's tropical astrology, which is based on the seasons. We know the sun goes through each of the constellations. I believe in destiny. I believe all the soul purpose that God has for us. And being around people, I can feel energy. It's like when you walk into the room and you feel a positive energy. You can't explain that. There's a lot of research about energy healing out there, and I believe it's because God created it. God created us. Astrology, it's powerful because it is a map of your soul. It's very deep, and if you're not using it to help others, it can be used for selfish reasons, your own gain. You have to remember that the devil knows your greatest weakness. Sometimes we have to be careful with these things. So don't take action just because your horoscope says to do something. It's about knowing yourself and understanding others and their energies and their personalities and their patterns, because it's all about making life a little easier.
An exploration of trauma, transformation, and triumph. Your healing starts here. And we are back with another episode of Through the Trauma Podcast. I'm Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me Miss Carmen Turner Schott. It's a very interesting conversation that we're going to have today because she is an astrologer, and she is going to talk to us about how this relates with trauma and how she uses astrology to help with trauma. So I'm very intrigued by this, Carmen. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us. I know it's going to be an exciting episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Really, how I got started in this was just based on a very intense experience I had in high school. I was raised Baptist. I was raised in the Bible Belt in the Midwest, the Ozarks in Missouri. And I was always very spiritual. And when I was 16, my friend had stayed over at my house, and we're really close. And that day was the last time I saw her. She was accidentally shot and killed. It was just a tragic hometown thing that happened where some boys had a gun, and they had put it around, were sharing it around town, but they thought there were no bullets in it. And it was just a tragic thing that happened when she was in the passenger seat of a car. And I was just in shock when I came home the next day, and that changed my life because I had never known anyone that had died. I had both my grandparents, and it was a trauma. It really was. And I realized how much that affected me even now as an adult. But because of that experience, I wanted to, learn more about why I'm here. I knew I was a soul. I knew that there was a purpose of life, and I always believed in God and in a higher power. And that same year after she passed away, I had a strange experience with a glowing ball of light in my doorway. And no one could explain that to me. So what happened was I played basketball, and I came home one night, and I had my door, my bed facing the door and a little night light on. And my parents, our house is pretty small, so my parents could see into my door. My mother and I were home alone. My dad and brother went on a fishing trip, and I went to bed, woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this yellow white orb floating in my doorway. And I always believed in angels, and I believed in angels, but I was afraid because it was the unknown. And so I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I tried to yell for my mother, and I was frozen. And I just laid there watching it for hours. And all I had control of was my mind. And I kept praying, please don't have it come in my room, and, over and over. And it never did. And it just floated there like this watery, translucent, little bit bigger than a softball. And after that experience, I started studying angels and all these different things to try to make sense of, what happened to me. That is when I had dreams. I always was a dreamer, and, dreams are throughout the Bible. So I always felt comfortable when I dreamed, but I would dream something and then it would happen. And no one could explain that to me. And I was very different than everyone in my family. And so I felt kind of alone, and I wanted to know, why am I like I am. I wanted something to validate my experiences really. And I went to this little store, and I'm a Virgo. So I'm born August 26th. And I got a little book about Virgo, and it was very accurate. It was like my personality. And I thought, why is this so accurate? And I was always interested in psychology. And after, losing my friend, I decided I wanted to be a counselor. I wanted to be a psychologist or a social worker, and I already kind of knew that my senior year, and that's what I wanted to do. But that book kind of validated my personality, and I didn't know why it was accurate. I didn't understand it, and I knew in my, how I was raised, it was taboo, and because of that, I've done a lot of research on Christianity, astrology, and the Bible, and I even have a little ebook called Astrology from a Christian Perspective, a little ebook on Amazon out there if you're interested. And it's just my own journey with, feeling guilty studying things that were different and outside the box. And I've been through the journey. I'm going to be 50, so it's been a long time, but I knew that this was a tool of self awareness. And I didn't quite understand why it was so accurate, but I taught myself how to do charts. And in the old days, it's all math and science, and it's based on what's going on in the sky right now. And God created the heavens and the earth, and in the book of Genesis, it's tropical astrology, which is based on the seasons, and it never changes. We know the sun goes through each of the constellations. And so I just loved it. And it became something that I taught myself how to do. And then I used it as a tool, a personality tool. It's not, what I do is very healing. I don't like try to predict things or, anything like people have, horoscopes. I don't do that. I use it to validate people's emotions and experiences and personality, their gifts, their strengths. And so I started just doing it with friends and family, and people would cry. Why is this so accurate? I'm like, it's a science. I didn't create it. It's different than people think it is. It's very psychological. And that's what I consider myself, a Christian astrologer and a psychological astrologer. And I just saw how deep it can help people heal and understand why certain things may have happened. I believe in destiny. I believe, that we all have a soul purpose that God has for us. And I see it play out in the lives of people that I've helped through these years. It's been my tool. And I would say losing my friend, it's not the only trauma I've had. It's the only one I'll probably share on here, but I've lost a lot of people close to me unexpectedly. And so when I did my chart, it all made sense. And because there's certain things in my chart that show loss of a loved one at a young age. And I started, why? And I started seeing these patterns with people when I would look at their chart, and especially with trauma. People that had trauma, I would see certain placements, certain signs, certain things, Scorpio, eighth house, different things. And I started researching really my whole life. I've been using this as a tool to help people. And I've always had two jobs: my normal licensed clinical social work job working with sexual assault survivors and as a victim advocate for a long time. And I actually worked for the military for over 25 years, and I just recently retired. So I've always had my side teaching of teaching the basics of astrology in a simple way so everyone can understand their strengths. And the first book I wrote was Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing. And it's really that, astrology is a tool that can help you heal, transform, and become more resilient. And I wrote it in a way that focuses on people's strengths, their personality strengths based on their sun sign alone. And I've seen that, everybody has its personality, its strengths, and all. I can just, being around people, I can feel its energy, like everything's energy in the universe. And
So
I,
I want
yeah,
to I want to pause you there for just one
sure.
moment because I have a lot of questions
Yes,
around this.
yes, I'm so excited. Yeah.
But I this is the thing. So I was getting ready to ask you about how this corresponds with energy because as a Christian myself and as being growing up in the Bible Belt, there was this whole complex about getting into energy and energy work. But the more that I've like lived my experiences and really learned God for myself, not because of what somebody says or
Yeah.
someone explains to me, but really like divulging into scripture and praying through it and meditating through it. And I come to find that energy is very biblical.
Yes.
Everything is built on energy.
Yes.
And there must be a correlation with astrology and energy? Because astrology seems like it thrives on energy. Can you tell
Sure.
us like the separation there or how
Yeah.
those two things correspond?
Yeah, and when I started out, I didn't know what energy was, and it's kind of like I was intuitive. So it's like, when you walk into the room and you feel a positive energy, you can't explain that. Or you walk into a room and it's negative, or you just feel like something tells you not a good vibe here. I don't want you here. The Holy Spirit, our higher self, we
Or
have a soul,
intuition? Yeah.
intuition. Yeah. I feel like what happened to me was I realized that when I would meet people, I would be around them, I would feel if they were fire, air, earth, or water, like what element. Like I'm like, "Are you a Leo?" And they're like, "Yeah, how did you know?" And I just realize, okay, how am I feeling this? I was feeling it. I was sensing it like an energy. They never told me their birth time. I could feel their energy and their traits. And when I really got into this, I started studying Kirlian photography. How, when they cut the leaf, the imprint, the energy of the leaf is still there, even though they took the leaf away. And I researched all these things, right, about energy. And then, and in the Bible, Jesus healed people. He taught that we could do these and the same things he does. And I kind of, went on a healing journey, especially trying to heal my trauma. I had Reiki done on me and physical therapy, just different. Really, Reiki is what it was, energy healing. And I didn't know what that was. And I wasn't real comfortable getting it done. But someone had said, hey, it helped me. And this was like when I was 20. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I did the Reiki and then I became a Reiki master. Like I took the 3 levels and I realized when I heard the story of Dr. Sui, you know, the reason he started researching energy and created Reiki was because he was a Christian boys professor in a school. He was a Christian and they asked him, how did Jesus heal? And he couldn't answer me. He's like, I don't know. He's like, can we, and he wanted to find the answer. So that's kind of how, it's a long story with Reiki, but it, ended up coming to the United States and
Are
it's,
you an empath?
yes. Oh, yes. I'm an empath. I've had to learn to have really strong boundaries.
Me too.
Especially when I was younger, I would cry so easy. If someone could hurt me so easily. If someone cries, I cry. Now that I'm older, I can say I have a thicker skin, and it's not always a good thing. I feel like, I miss I was like a child, really. I trusted everyone. Like I always saw the good in everyone and everything. And that's kind of how I had some bad relationships in my younger days with people that were narcissistic or that were abusive. And
And the reason I ask that too is because you said when you walk into a room, you feel it. And I believe everybody has intuition. Everyone kind of knows, when you enter into a place and it's like danger there, you have that sixth sense kind of intuition.
yes,
But I believe that empaths feel that more deeply.
oh yeah,
Like I'm an empath as well. And I
I
feel
can
like when
tell
you
you.
walk into a room, that it's like you absorb the energy. If people's depressed, you also absorb that. If
Yes,
people are angry, you also absorb that. And it
absolutely.
creates I know for myself, I can scour back if I feel like there's anger here or tension here.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I ask if you were an empath.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's and those empathic abilities, some people have it's a lot stronger for some people and it definitely is me and I can tell, with your energy too, you have a very kind, caring energy and that's what empaths are. They're compassionate. They can put themselves in other people's shoes and the problem with this, which astrology also kind of validates, is that we tend to attract our opposite. So my energy was so different than the people that I would want to be around me and they'd want to tell me all their problems and then I kind of wanted to, fix them, help them and rescue them. I went through that whole thing like feeling like I felt bad for people. And I had to learn that, everyone has their own karma or life or experiences and I'm not meant to take it on myself. It took me many years to learn that. And I think being a counselor, getting trained as a social worker helped me with boundaries and all those tools that helped me in my personal life. And I had to learn the hard way through heartbreak and dating some jerks, I'll be honest, in my life. And so when I met my husband, it was pretty funny because my friend was trying to set me up with him. And I said, find out his birthday. She said, "Oh, you're so silly." I said, "No, I want to know." And she found out he's born the same day as me. We're both born on August 26th, but he's 5 years older. And we've been married 26 years this June. And we have a daughter. She's 20. And she missed our birthday by 1 hour. She was almost born on August 26th. She's August 25th. And so we're all Virgos in my house. But I always dated people that were opposite of me, that didn't want a commitment or that weren't loyal or trustworthy. And I don't know, I would just see the good and people would warn me, and I just didn't see it. And I had to go through that. And I feel like I was meant to go through those things to make me stronger. And going through trauma, losing my friend at such a young age. And then I lost another friend in 2020 from a shooting as well. It's something in my life. It was just a freak thing here in St. Louis, Missouri. It was all over the news. That was my college friend that was on the news. It just felt like a dream, like it was not real. And so I've had to really use all the things that I tell other people to do. I've had to implement them on my own self to heal. And self-care is huge to me, and healing, because healing is a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. And I've been, a trauma specialist. I'm a certified trauma specialist. I've worked with crisis intervention so much. You kind of get used to always being in that crisis mode, and it's not healthy sometimes. And so now that I've kind of retired and started my new journey, I realize how I was in this mode of constantly helping and taking in the lead, taking charge, always kind of being the one that has to help people. And I realized, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have joy in my life. I want to do things that are fun. And I've kind of did my service and my duty to helping in those hard situations with people. And I did my time, So now I want to do things that are fun. So I'm thinking of working with children, doing play therapy. I'm getting trained in that to do private practice and work with kids and teens again, because that's really what I did, what I wanted to do when I started out. But I ended up working with adults. And I love being a victim advocate, is 24/7 on call, helping people in their hardest time of their life, giving them hope, giving them resources and support. And I've always seen astrology has really been the thing that kept me strong too, because I realized, I started researching, astrology is in the Bible. It's the symbols are in there. And when I started really, feeling like, there's something to this, like I believe that God created the universe, God created the stars, the sky, he created energy. And it's like the full moon. The full moon, as a social worker, I saw this when I was on call on the weekend. All of the teens would run away and go to the police station on the full moon, weekend. The police and detectives would tell me, "Oh, we're the busiest during the full moon." And emergency room docs, my husband's a OR nurse, and he would say, "Yeah, we always get really busy when there's a full moon." Okay, why? And I started looking at research, and it's because our bodies are made mostly of water. The moon affects the tides of the ocean. Of course, it would affect us. We're on Earth.
Well, this is where energy comes back in to the
Oh,
whole thing. And
yeah.
this is where I got that question really, is because I also have a nursing background. And
Nice.
when I worked in nursing, you would have patients who had sundowners real bad on full moons.
Oh, yeah.
I was never in labor and delivery, but I had a friend who was in labor and delivery, and she said it was so busy on a full moon.
Yeah.
Everybody's going in labor. So it's just that has to do with the energetic, the force that's in the universe and how that affects us. And to think that we're not made up of energy, or to think that that doesn't affect us, scientific evidence. So how can
Absolutely.
someone deny that?
Absolutely. And it's kind of neat too with Reiki. Animals love Reiki. They can sense it. It's intention. When you pray or when you're going to do something, it's have a discernment. It's sending love and affection and healing to someone. And I never saw anything wrong with that. And I felt like, this is interesting. I don't know why this works, because the research shows, like, when they've done Reiki in hospitals on infants that are born premature, they start thriving. When they've done Reiki medical wise on wounds, the person's wound heals quicker. There's a lot of research about energy healing out there, and I believe it's because God created it. God created us. There's a lot that I admit I don't understand or know, but I'm very open minded just because of the experiences I've had, with that glowing orb, which when I got older, I never thought at the time that it could have been my friend or an angel, or I kind of thought maybe it is an angel, I didn't know. But maybe it was my friend visiting me. I don't know. I didn't even click it at the time, but she had passed that same year. But later on, someone said, well, how do you know that wasn't your friend? Her spirit come to say she's okay. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I just know that I can't explain what happened to me. And I believe there's more to it.
Have you ever heard of? So I had someone ask me recently that it was a couple that I'd met, and the husband starts saying these things over me. He's like, I see this in you, I see that in you. And I was just like, that's what makes you say that. Like, I'm curious, right? Like,
Yeah.
why would you say that to me? And
Yeah.
what is it about me that's making you say that? And his wife looked at me and she said, he's a seer. And
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
said, what is that?
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
said, he's gone to pastoral school or whatever, and, he's deep in ministry and deep in spirituality with the Lord. And
Yeah.
she said he sees things over
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
I wondered as you were explaining that, it almost sounds like possibly that could be you as well. Like I think there's different levels even when we look back at scripture, there's different levels to healing, there's different levels to any kind of spirituality. And I don't know that it's necessarily some people are gifted in that thing. I think that's definitely true. And then other times it's how close are we to that thing? Like, is it a tool or a resource that God gives us for a certain time and
Yeah.
place? And then he doesn't, but then we don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that looks, but I wonder, have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I call it like, it's these visual things. I mean, I kind of feel like that's what I am since I was young. I mean, even now in my life, it's like God gives me dreams. So it's like when I dream, it's different than like me just having a feeling. Like if I have an intuition or a feeling, I tend to doubt that and I don't always share it with people because I'm like, where's it coming from? Is it my ego? But when I dream, I know that I'm not doing it. It's being given to me, and I will see, sometimes I'll see what's going to happen. And I'll go ahead and share this. God showed me both times before both my grandmothers passed, and I woke up and knew they were going to pass. And they did. And I was able, because I had the glimpse or the sight before it happened, I was strong and I was able to be the strong one for my family. And I kind of had a peace about it. I know it sounds strange, but because I got a glimpse of preparation, like this is coming. And I tend to dream about big changes in my life, big things coming at work, even with people around me sometimes. And I had to learn discernment. Do I share this dream with someone that I had about them? I had to learn my whole life when to share, when not to share. If it didn't feel right to share, I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't share. But if it felt like you need to tell them I have this strong feeling, then I would share with someone a dream and I would be careful how I'd say, like, are you doing okay? I'm just, you're in my dream and I'm just checking on you. I wouldn't always tell them exactly what I would dream, but I would see it play out. And all the things that I've dreamed about all these years, my husband now believes because he's Catholic, but he was like being married to me. He's like, he knew that is weird. You told me you dreamed that, and so he believes, if I dream, did you dream anything? I'm like, no, no. So it's like, I listen to my dreams. I write them down. I know when I wake up, if it's just a symbolic dream, if it's silly, or if it's something that's a message, and I listen to it and I pray about it. Okay, what does this mean? Please show me, show me more, but it's usually things that I cannot prevent. It's nothing that can be prevented. It's like I get a glimpse of what God has already set in motion and it plays out regardless. And I'm not able to prevent or stop it. It's just like I get a glimpse of it. And then, I had read a quote somewhere. It said that nothing happens in the real world until it happens in a dream. I read something and like, wow, because I can't stop it. I just knew it. Like the day I dreamed about my grandmother she came towards me in the dream. It was so vivid. It's like these dreams are real memories. They're so vivid. They're not like a normal dream. I'm awake. I also wake up in my dreams sometimes and I know I'm awake. Like I know I'm dreaming, like a lucid dream. And I don't have control of that and I don't like it because then I panic and then I really wake up because I'm like, I didn't like that, that I'm not in control of that. But I dreamed of my grandmother coming towards me and she tried to tell me something I couldn't hear. And she said, I knew she said goodbye and she kind of disappeared. I woke up and I told my dad, you need to call grandma. and something's not right. And he's like, she's fine. I'm like, no. And I was at their house in my hometown at the time. My husband was in the Air Force, so we had just moved back from Germany. And I was living out of suitcases at my parents' house when I had the dream. And I said, just call. So he called, and my aunts were out there. And he's like, she's fine. That night, she died in her sleep. Just went to sleep. And I knew she was. I knew it. And my mom came in the middle of the night, and I told them I had a dream about her. I'm worried. And so those little things are why I am open-minded, that there's
So
more to life than we know, you know?
can you tell us a little bit about how you use astrology to affect trauma or to help with trauma? So if we took a certain instance, right, where someone come to you and they said, I'm really struggling through grief or sadness or depression or any of the traumas, right? I'm suffering through this thing because XYZ happened. Where do you start? Or like, how do you use astrology to help them?
I kind of, the way I explain it, it's like a psychological Jungian, like a symbolic archetypes. I start with their birth time. What time are they born, their birth date and year, and the exact place of birth. You have to have those things to have an accurate chart, because the way it works, the basic way to explain astrology is at the moment, time, place of your birth. If you're on Earth looking up at the sky, all of the planets are in a certain star constellation, which are the 12 zodiac signs that we know. They're constellations in astronomy. The planets are in a certain constellation, and then we break the sky into 12 sections, and we take a picture of it and put it on a piece of paper. And it's a wheel. And that's what your birth chart is. It's a wheel with 12 houses. Each house rules an area of life, and each planet has an energy. Each zodiac sign has its energies and traits. So this is the weird thing about this that I started researching, because I'm like, okay, how did they come up with these personality traits? How did they come up with these energies, and write it down? How did this become a thing? And even in ancient times, the Jewish temple, the 12 sons of Jacob, there's the 12 is symbolic in a lot of the religions in history. But they had the signs on the money. They had this 12 signs on the temple floor. And then even if you go to Washington, D.C., which the Christian Masons that founded our country built Washington, D.C. a certain way astronomically. And there's something called the D.C. zodiacs that I found out about. There's zodiac symbols hidden throughout Washington, D.C. Why? Okay, there's all these things, right? So I think the biggest thing is, I don't know really, I think God created it. I think somehow in ancient times, people realized its energy. They realized, it's a science, because you could see it. You could see the planet. You could see when there was a lunar eclipse. You could see when there was, in the old days, lunar eclipses were bad. There were, they didn't know what it was. Now we know it's okay. We have scientists, but I think all this knowledge that we're given, I think God has allowed us to have more knowledge. And sometimes science kind of scares me in a way because of AI and all these other things going on. But if God didn't want us to have these things, I don't think we would have them. So I think a lot of it is that. But what I do is I just analyze the personality traits. So when I look at the chart, where's their sun sign? That's your main identity. Where's the moon when you were born? Even that's your emotional nature. That's how you show love. That's where you find comfort and security. That's your inner self. Mercury's the planet of communication. A lot of this goes back to Greek and Roman mythology too. Mercury is the communicator, and it's how teaching, writing, self-expression. Venus is the planet of love and relationships. So I just look at everything and I analyze it. I tell them, I can see different things. For instance, if someone's a Scorpio, okay, Scorpio sun, they often have some type of trauma or betrayal in their life. And I would say I've looked at 100 random charts, did research, and I had asked people 5 questions, and 99.9% say yes. And it's specific, because Scorpio rules death, rebirth, transformation in astrology, and healing. Pluto is a newer planet. In ancient times, there wasn't Pluto or Neptune or Uranus. They were found later. So they became part of it because their energy affects the world. A lot of these things, that when a planet was found, it has to do with what was going on Earth. Like Pluto, when they found Pluto, was when nuclear power was created, the nuclear bomb. Neptune, when it was found, there was a spiritual revolution. So on Earth. So some of these big astrological events, astronomy, really astronomical events, relate to life on Earth. And it really goes back to the book of Genesis. And there's so much we don't know. Are there other solar systems out there? I don't know. The universe is so vast, right? Can we time travel? I mean, now I never thought there would be a day where they're saying they're trying to go to Mars to create a civilization on Mars to live. It's all this science and technology has to do with astrology. It's like God's plan. And one of the quotes that I like is in the Bible. It's when the disciples asked Jesus, "How will we know when you will return?" And he said, "There shall be signs in the sun, moon, and stars."
Uh-huh.
I
Yep.
always wondered, I'm like, yes, because it's energy. There's something about that. And there's even more about it. Like when I started wondering, are there books and things that were written that we don't know? Like the Catholic Church, the Nicene Creed decided what books would be in the Catholic Bible, right? And then, Martin Luther broke, and then we have all the Protestant religions, Baptist came from that, but in the Catholic churches all over Europe, I would go in these churches when we lived there, and you can see the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac symbols of Scorpio, which was the eagle, was their symbol, Taurus, the bull, Leo, the lion, and Aquarius is the face of a man or the water bear. And you can see these symbols in Catholic churches all over the world. Why are there astrology symbols in Catholic churches? I don't
Well,
know.
so I want to back up just a little
Yes,
bit
yes, yes.
because all of these things go together. And I will say that first of all, when you're describing the animals of the zodiac, I don't know a lot about astrology. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah,
When I
that's
was
okay.
young, I kind of read horoscopes. That's
Sure,
probably the
sure.
extent of
Yeah.
it. When I started studying scripture, when I became a Christian, I do remember him saying that in scripture. The
Wise
wise men, when they were following the Star of David, like
Yeah,
they're following a star.
I know.
There's definitely validity there. I think that people just have to be really careful, as we do in anything, right?
Yeah,
But with energy, I mean, I talk a lot of manifestation because I believe in manifestation.
definitely. The power of positive thinking and yeah,
I believe it's very biblical, but because every place that God has given us a gift to divulge into these things, you have to also understand there is power there. I'm not denying that, but we also have to understand that the enemy wants to come in and distort that. So everywhere there's this power, this immaculate power, there's also like a strong push to discredit or to distort it. And
yeah,
so I think that when people go into studying these things,
yeah,
be it manifestation or, all of the new age things that people get into, or even astrology, any of that, you have to take it, you have to do your own digging and your own studying in it because the Bible also talks about the sun rises on the evil as it does on the righteous. Well, if the Bible is going to talk about it, it's like that's a gift that God has given
yeah,
all creation,
yeah,
that the sun is going to rise
yeah,
regardless. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. So
yeah,
these powerful tools or resources that God's given us, He's given it to all of us. It still works. You don't have
yeah.
to be a Christian to use these
How you
things.
use
Like
it, yeah.
they
It's your
work.
intention. You need to use it to help others. That's why I
We just
do
have to
believe.
be careful not to
Yeah.
use it in the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because some people with astrology, it's so powerful. And like I'm helping write an ethics and astrology course for a college right now because it is a map of your soul. It's very deep, and I could see why there was caution of just anyone having that information because
Mhm.
it's a powerful tool, if you're not using it to help others, it can be used for, selfish reasons, your own gain and all this stuff. And that's where, like anything, it's your intentions. And yeah,
I want to say this as well, going back to what you said about the Freemasons. I've actually went down a conspiracy
yes,
like a hole of conspiracy stuff. In fact, I got so deep down this hole, I had to back away from it because it was like it become very depressing to me to
it is.
that there's so much I don't know the word. I guess the word I'm trying to use is like distortion
Yeah,
and how it's under this guise of Christianity, but I don't think it's Christian. I don't think Freemasonry is Christian, and I
yeah,
don't think that I think a lot of the things on the surface may look Christian, but when you go deeper and dig deeper down into that, it's not at all. And
Yeah.
I think even with the animals that you're describing,
Yeah.
and this I don't know.
Yeah.
This
This.
I'm just curious about.
Yeah.
But I do think, in the Bible, he talks about in the end times, like, or when we get into heaven, you'll see these animals. It's like half eagle, half,
Yeah.
I don't know what they're called, but you know what I'm talking. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
when those things are very interesting, but I think I just wonder if some of that was pulled from scripture or how those animals come about. Do you know that? Like
Yeah.
how they were assigned to these different, was it the attributes of the animal?
Yeah, it's kind of, the way the star constellation formed, looks like Gemini looks like twins. The symbolism is how they did that. And really there's a lot of unknowns, there's you can do history, look in history of how all this started, some of these things, but I think it was even, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, I think in ancient times, they looked at the sky. I mean, that's how they followed the star to find Jesus, like you said. I had that in my little book. And someone told me, oh, I didn't know the three wise men were astrologers. The Sunday school teacher asked me about it at work, years ago. But I think that all these things are tools that can help people heal if they're used in the right way, like energy healing. For me, it's been astrology because to me, it's psychological. It's deep. It validates what you know about yourself. I don't tell anyone anything they don't know about themselves. That's why I realize this is really powerful because it can help someone heal just doing an hour of explaining their basic energies of their chart. And they're like, that, yeah, I'm like that. That's how I am. And then they'll share. And it's like so deep where 8 sessions of counseling, normal counseling, don't even get the surface, scratch the surface. It's such I call it, I call it a healing tool. That's how, I mean, because it just validates what you know. It's not like tarot cards or you're telling someone something and they're coming to you, tell me about myself. No, I use it as a psychological tool, like Myers-Briggs, like four lenses. I'm trained in that too. The personality, gold, the different colors and their traits. It's all kind of based on Jungian archetypes, really, and the energies of the different archetypes and personality traits. And I'm like, when I have someone, I tell them their strengths, like, you're strong, you're resilient. These are things going on. Now, the one thing about astrology that people, and I'm not like big into this, but you can look at transits and see major events that are happening in your life. So there is some predictive things to astrology that I don't know how to explain why the energy is there. And there's these certain things that as an astrologer, I know people come to me, I'm worried, I have this going on, because a lot of people study these things. And I'm like, you need to focus on the positive. Let's focus on your birth chart because that's never going to change. The birth chart is, I call the map of the soul. It's even twins can be different emotionally because the moon sign changes signs every 2.5 days. So if the twins, I've done charts for twins that were born a day apart or 5 hours apart, and they are very identical chart, except the moon is in a different house and sign, and they are very different emotionally. Some may have a different rising sign, so that's your physical appearance. So they look different. So I've seen this play out, but twins often are different. And that's also because they have unique souls. You can have the exact chart if they're born like minutes apart and like, well, we're not alike. Well, that's because you have a different soul. You guys are different souls, but you have a very similar life, map or personality energy, and they're like, well, yeah, we think alike. We do this, so everyone's always asked me about twins. Well, how does twins charts work? I always get asked that. But I think, it's just been something that has helped me understand and why I went through certain things. And I even had some experiences where, I know that I believe we all have a soul mission. We all are here to learn and to grow and heal. And there's a reason that everything happens. And that's what astrology has helped me realize. Nothing is just fluke or chance, and I have some things in my chart that I know now studying astrology with my eighth house. I have a lot of eighth house stuff, moon and things like that, that explained why I had a lot of trauma and loss in my life as far as those unexpected kind of crisis things that a lot of people have never experienced. And I'm like, I was meant to go through that so I could be strong and then help others. And that's what, I've tried to do is help other people and let them know, hey, healing is a process. It takes time. Don't beat yourself up. It's normal where you think you're healed, you think you're over something, and then a song or a memory comes up and you get triggered. That's okay. But as long as you make progress, it can take, time. Time heals all wounds. I really do believe that with time, we really can heal. It doesn't mean you're going to forget the trauma or forget the bad things that have happened or the good thing. You have to remember just to let it go. If it comes up, let it go, because the healing is that you don't have that same intense reaction to the memory or to the experience.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add to that because I think that is a great like overall. But if you want to dig into that just a little deeper, I think you have to. Trauma is one of those things that we have to feel. We have to give ourselves permission to. We have to validate it and kind of give ourselves permission to feel that in a safe space and in a safe environment. And that does take time. Sometimes when you're right in the middle of a traumatic situation, you can't just sit with that feeling because you're not strong enough. You could get re traumatized. But over time, you can sit with that thing. But it's so vital to sit with that because while I think time does heal wounds, it's like sometimes the intentionality of I'm going to heal from this thing. Therefore, I'm going to sit with this thing. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to meditate on it because traumas can get stuck in our bodies. And if it's unresolved, it can sit in different areas of our bodies and it will come out. It'll start to come out,
It
be
can
it
cause
triggers,
illness.
be
Yeah.
it sickness, be
Yeah.
it, just anger or frustration or depression, or even in suicidal ideations or suicide, someone taking that to the furthest extent.
Sure. Sure.
So I just hope that when people listen to this, that they know that yes, trauma, you have to deal with it. You can't let it sit there. And that's one of the reasons that I love having people like yourself on here, Carmen, who, have all these different ideas and modalities and ways that we can learn about ourselves because we live in a really hard world. I mean,
It
it's
is.
increasingly getting more evil. We're seeing more spiritual things take place, I
Yes.
think, as we're getting more close to the
Battles.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, spiritual warfare, it's a
Yeah.
real thing, and I think it's so important that people tap into this and learn how to manage emotions so that they can then manage the trauma and the things that's happened to them. And there is modalities that can help.
Yeah.
Might look
You know,
different for different people.
like yoga, when I started getting trained in some of the trauma therapies, yoga, they have research that, chair yoga, different stretching helps you get grounded in your body. Dr. Bessel, I did his training, the body keeps score. So our body holds on to memories and things and emotions. And that's why I like energy work, because it can help people heal, move out the traumas. It can make you cry. It can help you release emotion. And you may not even know why you're crying when you get Reiki done, but you're letting it go. And that's the point. Just don't think about it. Just release and let it go. And then some people, with trauma, sometimes it's hard to be in your body. And so with yoga and stretching and mindfulness and walking, being out in nature, whatever it is to help you connect to your body, that is also really important, that you don't depersonalize or detach too much, because that's very natural. Because feeling emotions can be hard. Like you said, you do have to feel and experience those array of emotions that come up. And whether it's, denial, guilt, it's kind of like the stages of grieving, the Kubler-Ross stages. And you can go jump around stages, they don't go in order. You could be in denial, or you could be angry right away, and then later you're bargaining. You just go through these different stages, is how I see it in my own life and in my clients' lives. And I'm like, it's okay, to feel this way. And when you start looking at anger, when something keeps coming up and bothering you, that means you're not over it. And so you need to, don't just push it down. It's okay. Why is this bothering me? Like, what is
That's
going
right.
on? Ask yourself, did something happen? Whether it's your mother saying
Hmm.
something, or your father, or someone trigger something, or, I kind of know what mine are, and I know now, it's okay to self-care, and it's okay to tell people no, and it's okay to say, I'm not going to put myself in that environment or situation that because it stresses me out, and I'm going to heal and take care of me. And I think sometimes it's hard for empaths and people that are spiritual to be selfish. And sometimes you have to learn to be a little bit, instead of helping everyone all the time, you can't help anyone if your cup is empty. So
That's
it's
right.
like fill your own cup first. And I had to learn that the hard way by getting sick and getting burned out and getting depleted. And I realized, I can still help people, but I need to have some fun. I need to do things for me too. And so it's always like, it's interesting. I took this class in leadership at the school I went to get my master's in, and they had all these, big high position people that own these big companies that were very successful, and in the social work field, I mean, in the helping agencies. And we all got to ask them one question. And I'll never forget, because, everyone looks up to these people. And there was like 12 people, and we had these little groups, they come through. I asked every single one of them, what do you do for self-care? And do you know that they all admitted me they don't, or they don't know how, or that's something that they don't, that their children tell them they need to work on. So I'm like, it normalized it from like, wow, these guys aren't doing self-care either. Okay. Well, I don't feel so bad. And so, but it's sad too. It made me sad that work and achievement and the drive, to help others and succeed was so much that they were neglecting themselves as well, in
Uh-huh.
a way. And they knew it because they didn't know how to answer me. I mean, I thought none of them had said, "Oh, make sure to go on vacation," or no one said. They admitted they don't do good at that.
Yeah,
So there's something to that,
for
and
sure.
and
Yeah.
I wrote in my book about that for each sun sign, how they can self care, because it can be different for, water signs are Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces. They typically heal by being near water, just, the ocean, looking at water, swimming. But the earth signs, they like to be doing things. So which is Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus. They're the workers. They like to be efficient, productive, and it's hard for them just to not be getting something done. So you can't have them self-care the same way that, a fire sign might self-care, which is going to the gym or running or, doing kickboxing or, being on the go, traveling. Everyone self-cares in a different way.
I love that.
And yeah,
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up about your book too, because I know as we're kind of getting near to the hour, I want you to share with my listeners where they can find your book. What are the titles of your
sure.
book, and then where can they find them?
I'll go and share the two most popular that are good to start with would be Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing. And it's transform your life through astrology. And in this book, it's basic. Anyone can pick up my book and they don't have to know anything about this. And I explain all of it in the intro. And then you can look up based on your birthday what sun sign you are. And I tell you your strengths, your how you transform, how you heal, how you can forgive, your health, self-care tips. And it's very psychological and like a self-help book. It really is. It's easy to read. It's called Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. That's my first book. And then I have a new book coming out in August called Your Astrological Energy. And I knew, because I realized that it's energy. That is why people resonate with the traits of the sun sign, because when you were born, the sun was in the sky in a certain constellation, and it affects life on Earth. How it works, I don't know how to explain it, guys, but you may resonate with it. Just like if you do Myers-Briggs, if you're an introvert, extrovert, it's the same kind of concept. It's a tool. It's just a tool of self-awareness. It's not something, to put all your, eggs in one basket and follow it blindly, just like dreams. When I had dreams before, I realized, like you said, sometimes I had a dream that I really thought was real, and I almost changed my life because of it. And my friend said to me, you have to remember that the devil knows your greatest weakness. And it was like, it woke me up, because sometimes we have to be careful with these things, like you said. And so don't take action just because your horoscope says to do something. That's not what this is about, what I do. It's about knowing yourself and understanding others and their energies and their personalities and their patterns, because it's all about making life a little easier. So, you know, when you're working with certain people and they may be a little difficult, or okay, I know their sign. Okay, they can't help it because this is their sign. I mean, you have more compassion for people and you don't get angry or judge them, or you understand them. So I'm like, and that helps me because I'm like, okay, I know who I'm dealing with and I know their strengths. I know their emotions, and they'll even tell me, I'm controlling. I mean, I have people tell me I like to control things and I'm sorry, but I said, hey, that's fine because I'm opposite of that. I go with the flow, So it's like knowing your family, your
Yeah,
kids,
I
your
love that.
yeah, I love it. It's to help you understand yourself and others and
Yeah.
to get along better.
Right.
That's really the tool.
So why don't you tell my audience as well where they can find you? Are
Sure.
you on social media?
Yes, I am. My business is Deep Soul Divers Astrology, Carmen Turner Schott, my Facebook page. You can, follow me there. And then I have Instagram, Carmen Turner Schott author, and you can follow me there. I do have classes. I do post things about my books on there. And I have my website, carmenturnerschott.com. And I have my books are on there as well as information if you want to contact me and are interested in learning more. If you've never had a psychological astrology chart done, I recommend it. I get it. It's very deep. It's very validating. It's probably not what you think. It's not, reading the horoscopes in the paper. It's
How
not
would
like that.
someone set that up with you?
Yeah. Yeah, you can just contact me through my contact page on my website or on Instagram or Facebook message me, and then I would email you. I'd need your email, and I would just need, your date and month of birth and year, and your time of birth is very important because that changes everything that was in the sky, right? It changes it. If you don't know your time, we won't have an accurate map of your soul. And then we need to know the place, city, state, country, because it's all based on longitude, latitude. And then I would send a Zoom link, schedule, have you send some questions like an intake form. Sometimes I can look at your spouse or children's charts if you want me to do that. A lot of parents come to me, they want me to look at their teenager, their chart, or help their teenager. I do that as well, just to give them the skills and tips. So I work with everyone. And now that, I'm doing this full time, I have more time to see clients where before I could only take on a certain amount and only
Right.
on weekends.
You very interesting
Thank you.
direction that you take this. And, I would love to learn as much from you as possible. It's hard to stuff everything into an hour. But thank you for coming on today and for sharing with us today and for just elaborating and helping us expand our knowledge that much more. Hey there, friend. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending this time here with us on Through the Trauma podcast. Your presence means more than you know. If this episode has spoke to you or gave you hope or made you feel just a little bit less alone, then I would love it if you would take a second, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who truly needs to hear it. Every share, every comment, every listen, it all helps our message get out and reach those who truly need it the most. Healing happens inside of a community, and together we are breaking the silence and creating space for transformation. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You are not alone.